Welcome back. The TrailerSmith here with another repair video. Today we're going to be covering bearing pack. We're going to be packing bearings on a 6K idler axle. Today we're going to go through the steps of how to tear it down, what to look for and inspect it to make sure everything's okay, and go over some of the tools and then show the reassembly on it. On a bearing pack, it is something that's often overlooked, and it needs to happen one time a year minimum. If you use your trailer daily, it needs to happen 2 times a year or quarterly. So let's get started. All right, let's cover the tools we're going to use today. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. These should be some tools that you have laying around. We're going to have a pair of channel locks, a pair of side cutters, a small hammer and chisel. I would recommend using some good nitrile gloves, or if you want to use latex. Once we get everything tore down, then we'll go over some of the washing procedure and the bearing pack. So the first thing we're going to do is get ready to remove the dust cap on the idler axle. We're going to start with a pair of channel locks to do that. Okay, when we remove the dust cap, I don't recommend reusing it. If you want to, that's your preference. Dust caps are cheap. They are bad about falling off once reused, so I am not going to reuse this one. So if I bend it or tear it up, I'm not really concerned about that because I won't be reusing. Sometimes they're tough to get off. So that's the dust cap removed. Once you get in here, there's several different types of nut retainers. This is a jam nut with a retainer that goes over it. Sometimes there's cotter keys. Sometimes there is a tab that bends up. We'll cover all those in another video, but for this one, it's going to be a jam nut with a retainer. So we'll remove this retainer first. It just snaps on. Just pull it straight off. I use the dust cap to put all my parts in so I don't drop them and lose them. Remove the spindle nut. Next will be the spindle washer. Spindle washer, this is a D washer. And next is the outer bearing. And now we have removed the hub assembly. So I'm going to show you the rest of the teardown on that. So now we're going to remove the grease seal. There's several ways to do it. A lot of times you can use channel locks. This one does look like it is a little rusty, so it may be hard to get out. You can use a heel bar or a pry bar. We're going to try it with a pair of channel locks first. Just kind of work your way around. Okay, seal is out, which exposes the inner bearing. So now we want to get as much of this grease out as possible. I have plenty of paper towels laying around. So I've got most of the grease out of it. Now we're going to wash it. One thing to note when you take your bearings out in your hub, if you're doing multiple hubs, keep the bearing with the spindle that it came off of. Don't mix and match them if you're reusing them especially. So to wash these, I'm going to show you just the old way to do it. You can pick up parts washer fluid. Most parts stores, Walmart even carries some. This is a water-based. I do have a large parts washer that will make it easier, but I'm still going to show you how to clean it just the old-fashioned way. So we'll just start here on the inside. And you want to get all the grease out and just spend a little extra time to do it. Like I said, I'm not going to wash this whole thing this way. I just want you to see. Then we'll wash your bearing. So it will begin to break it down. They do make solvent base. Everything I use is water based. Seems to work really good. You can just use some paper towels. And you'll wash that and get all the grease out. Same way with a bearing. Bearing's going to take a little longer. You want to get all of that grease out of the bearing. You actually soak it in here. Again, take your time because if you don't get all the old grease out, it's just going to thin your new grease. And you can see that starting to clean up. Like I said, doing it this method will take some time. I'm going to put this stuff in a commercial washer just to show you how clean it is so we can do a bearing inspection. Also remember to wash the nut, spindle washer. If you're going to reuse your cap, which I don't recommend, wash it. The seal will not be reused. We're going to throw that away and we'll replace that with a new seal. We have the bearings out of the parts washer. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to dry them off. Do not spin dry these. I see people do that with compressed air. I'm going to use compressed air. I'm going to put it on paper towel to help soak up some of the fluid. We're going to do all the bearings and parts this way, as well as the hub. Something else you can use on this to help is some brake clean or parts spray, parts cleaner spray. It will help evaporate it off, so you can use that. There's a little bit of residue. There's a little bit in there. We will final clean that off. So we'll get all the parts dried and ready for new grease. All right, now that we've got everything clean and dried, we're going to pack our bearings. I'm going to show you how to do it the old school way. If you don't have a bearing packer tool, then I'm going to show you how to do it with the tool. The tool is getting easier to find and they're not that expensive. So if you're going to do this on a regular basis, I would recommend investing in a tool. So we're going to use some good high temp bearing grease. I'm going to take some, put it in the palm of my hand. So this is the way I done it as a young person. You're gonna take the grease palm of your hand. You're gonna take the larger side of the bearing. You're just gonna rake it on your hand, and you'll see the grease starting to come out. And there's nothing wrong with doing this if you don't have a bearing packer. It was done like this for a long time. Once you see grease coming all the way through, that bearing is packed. Now you need to do that all the way around until you get it completely packed. One thing that I did not mention was to check the bearing to make sure there's no pitting or discoloration. We have checked the bearings. They look very good actually. But if there is any discoloration, pitting, scarring, anything that doesn't look right, just stop what you're doing there and the bearing will need to be replaced, which we will cover that in another video. All right, this is a bearing pack tool that we use. It works very well, super quick. Put your bearing cone down, put it in there, and press. And if the grease is cold, sometimes it takes a little bit. So now we've got a well-packed bearing. We will move on and do the outer bearing, and then we'll assemble it in the hub. All right, now that we have the inner and outer bearing packed, we're going to put some grease inside the hub. Do not fill this cavity full. It has to have airspace in there for when it does heat up. So I just take some grease and put in there. You can under-grease it, but like I said, you can over-grease it. So it's like put a decent amount right there. And just make sure you put the cone the correct way. It's the inner bearing Kind of pack that down in there. And now we will put a new inner seal in. There's a couple of ways to do this. You can use a block. They do make a seal installer. I'm just going to use a hammer, and we're just going to start slowly, and we're just going to walk it all the way around till we get it to go in. Just lightly tap, and don't use a real big hammer. When you hear that, you're putting your hammer half on the seal, half on the back side of the hub, so that you don't drive it in too far. Then wipe that back side of the seal off so it doesn't collect dirt. Okay, now we're going to move over to the spindle. So check your spindle out. Make sure, especially where the seal rides this area, make sure there's no rust or corrosion. If there is, use some real fine emery cloth or use some steel wool just to clean that up. This one actually looks really good. Always check underneath, make sure that you haven't lost a bearing, or if you bought the trailer used, there's no damage to the spindle. And then we're gonna wipe some grease on this and install the hub. Just put a liberal amount. Try not to get any towards the back. If you do, it's no problem. It's just going to collect dirt. Now we're going to install the hub, and just be careful when you're going on. Okay, it went on all the way. Then we'll take the outer bearing. I'm going to push it in. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge. Once it's in, just take and wipe that grease to pack it down in there. And now we will reinstall our washer, nut, and retainer. And again, make sure the bearing is all the way in, that the hub is straight, you have your threads exposed, and now we're going to put our washer, put our nut. I'm going to show you how to set the lash on the bearing. So we'll put our washer first, and then we'll take our nut. Just get it finger tight. Now we're going to take our channel locks. This is a very critical step that a lot of people miss or they don't understand. So we're going to tighten the nut clockwise while we spin the hub counterclockwise at the same time. And we're going to tighten it down till we can't go no more. Okay, that's all the way down. So now that we've done that, we don't want to move the hub anymore. So now we're going to back off a full turn. And then we're going to tighten it back down all the way again without moving the hub. And now we want to back it off about 3/8, quarter turn. And that will properly set the bearing lash. Then we'll reinstall our nut retainer. And these only go on one way. This is a D that goes in that D right there. And that's completely installed. Now I'm going to show you how I install the grease cap that will help you out to keep you from maybe losing one. So now we're going to take a little parts cleaner. We're going to spray just a little bit on a paper towel and just lightly wipe the inside rim of this hub. You don't have to get it down in the grease. We're just going to make sure that's clean, and I'm going to show you why. So now we're going to take the new grease cap that we have here. There's a couple of products you can use. I like using just a blue Loctite. You don't need a bunch on here. Just put a little. Grease caps are bad about flying off. This is the cheapest component we're putting on here, but if it flies off, you're not going to lose anything, but you're going to get a bunch of dirt. So now that we got some Loctite, we're going to set this up here, and I'm going to show you how to install this with a chisel. We have a tool that actually cups over that puts it on very easy. Most people don't have that. So get it started kind of like that, and we're just going to walk it in very carefully, just like we did the seal, but just with a chisel. Like I said, again, just take your time. Once it gets started, it's very easy. Then you can just go around till you get it bottomed out. Okay, that's all the way down. Just do not hit it with a hammer there. You can touch the end of the spindle or the nut, which will cause this to fly off, or you can cause the nut to overheat just from the friction. Now we're gonna, on this back side back here, I got a little grease, I made a mess, so we're just gonna clean that up, just make it look good. And like I said, just get it off so it doesn't collect a bunch of dirt. So you can clean all that off. You can use parts cleaner and a spray, just don't spray it directly on here, spray on paper towel. That's what we'll do there, and we'll get all that cleaned up. And that's it. So this is a bearing pack on a 6K idler axle. This is the same procedure where you're doing brake drum, hydraulic brakes. You know, it doesn't matter as long as it's a greased bearing. It's all the same. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, comment, just put those below. Don't forget to subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. I hope this was helpful to you, and we'll see you soon with the next video.